Good afternoon to people joining us from Asia and good morning to people joining us from Europe. We welcome you to the virtual session hosted by Nexdigm in association with ICICI Bank, Singapore, on the topic Global Capability Center, India as the preferred destination. I'm Alpana Shirgaonkar from Nexdigm, and I will be joined by eminent speakers from the industry during the next 1 hour to discuss various aspects of the subject. I'm the Executive Director at Nexdigm and Head Operations for the Business Process Management Practice. Nexdigm is an employee-owned, independent, global business advisory organization that has been supporting multinational companies in their various business strategies and projects since the late 90s. We have helped businesses from over 50 countries across their function to optimize their processes to turn better equity. Nexdigm has been the recipient of multiple accolades. We were honored to receive the International Accounting Bulletin for the Advisory Project of the Year in both 2017 and 2019. Additionally, we are consistently rated by Euromoney to be among the world's leading tax and transfer processing. Nexdigm provides multifunctional and digital capabilities across business consulting, business services, and professional services. We provide both public and privately held firms and with integrated solutions navigating their complex challenges. We are industry agnostic and work with a vast array of businesses, industrial, banking, private equity, telecommunications, food processing, aviation, etc. This webinar is focused more towards the business process management and how it is shaping the new normal to become the better normal. With this, I call upon Sukanya Roy to highlight the GCC landscape in India. Sukanya is the India head of GCC and BPM at Nexdigm. Thank you, and over to you, Sukanya.
Thank you, Alpana. Is there a way to go full screen on this in the presentation?
Yes, just give me a moment.
So while we wait for the presentation to be set and the next slide to come in, for the benefit of all those who've joined us today, just want to lay it out of what a GCC is. GCC essentially is Global Capability Centers. These are the technology operations, the business process management centers of multinationals, not Indian organizations, that are present in India. India is actually a thriving ecosystem for GCCs, one of the largest in the world, and has been a key driver for driving the technology industry, the IT BPM industry in India. Could we go to the next slide? Thank you. So as you can see, GCCs have completed close to about 25 to 30 years in India. The very early ones came in early 1990s. Texas Instrument was in fact probably one of the first ones to set up, and they actually got their computer servers on bullock carts, kid me not. And that's how the industry started. The last decade has seen rapid growth in not just the number of GCCs that have come into India, but also the type of organizations that have come into India. So while it was mostly the forte of technology organization, banks, retail companies, in the last few years, you've seen a lot of manufacturing companies, traditional industries setting up their technology and business operations here. And that trend is pretty much driven by digital. As more and more industries adopt digital, India has become a prime destination for them to be able to tap onto the digital talent. The 2020 numbers that you see here are estimates because as we speak, NASSCOM is going through a study to update these numbers. But what we expect is more than 1,350 companies, global companies, have set up small, medium, and large technology centers and operation centers in India. And many of them having multiple centers, that adds up to 2,000 plus. And when we say large, some of them are as large as 35,000 people. When we say small, you'll have some centers as small as 50 to 100 people. But essentially, they're doing core work here, not necessarily just managing vendors and partners through their centers here. So they're not project management centers, but actually where global portfolio work is getting delivered. Can we move to the next slide? So I just want to touch upon a little bit upon the nomenclature, how the nomenclature and the role itself has evolved over years. The phase one of what we would call as the GCCs were termed as captives. They were essentially set with cost arbitrage in mind. I need 3 people to do this work. It'll cost me X in US, Y in Europe, and X by 5 in India and Y by 3 in India. And hence I just set up a team here. And I would just send them a list of tasks that they need to take on a regular basis. I'll manage them from here. I'll get the work out. They will be an extension of my team and they will do whatever tasks I allot them. I spoke to a friend of mine who was one of the early employees of a very matured, one of the largest tech companies in India. And they literally, what they used to do is go every day morning, open up their backlog, see 4 bugs, solve them, submit it, and that's it. That was their role. And this was a guy from a premium institute. And that's what it was about 25 years back in most of the organizations. Then we move into the next segment, which is essentially called the GIC, or the Global In-House Center, and some people call it the Innovation Center. But essentially, that is the phase when people started focusing on business impact. People started, identifying what are the unique opportunities for a GCC in India and leveraging it for that. So it moved on from being just task allocation to task ownership. So you would have a manager here who would be part of the roadmap discussion, who would know that this is the overall feature that I need to enable, and then work with the team here. You started getting experienced people, high-skilled people. This is also a time when you started seeing a lot of people relocating back from the headquarters, Indian origin people who would be coming back with that kind of experience and working in teams here. This is also a time when you would start seeing a lot of expats who would come in for a couple of years, whose focus was how do we integrate this, this organization better with the larger organization, and how do we start creating subject matter expertise and make it more aligned to the larger organization. So this is the phase where people really started focusing on what else can be done here. They are good at technology, they can get the task done. How else do we leverage it? Cut to where we are today, where we call it as GCC Global Capability Center. And in fact, as we speak, we at NASCOM, we're working on defining what would be the next persona, and we're not changing the name, but we're just calling it GCC 4.0. Essentially, what would be the next persona? How do we emerge going forward? But as of today, if you see most of the organizations, they are, of course, at different levels of maturity. You wouldn't have all organizations at the same level of maturity. Among some of the larger, organizations, you wouldn't have all the teams at the same level of maturity. But what you would see is invariably more or less every center that you speak about, India is becoming a hub for digital skills. This is where people are thinking about, hey, I need, in my future, I will need at least 200 people trained in AI model building. And where is it that I should start locating this talent? And India is emerging as a strong case in most of these organizations. This is where, India centers have started contributing to creating new revenue channels, contributing to IP creation. You will start seeing global leaders operating out of India, which means that their mandate is way beyond teams in India. Of course, the portfolio was never for India alone. The portfolio was always global, but you would have seen even 7 to 8 years back, the leaders would largely have their teams completely in India. And that's changing, where you have more and more global mandates. And that's been the evolution. And as you see, Now the focus is really breakthrough innovation and contribution, direct contribution to top line and bottom line. Figuring out how that can be done. Can we move to the next slide? I think this is another representation itself of the mindset and the value add that you would have seen in India. And as you can see, since 2017 onwards, most of the India centers are emerging as digital COEs. They have a local market focus. Let me give you an example. One of the largest database companies, and they deal in enterprise software, but they also have large scale storage solutions. They actually became an integral part of the Aadhaar, which is the digital UID, digital unique ID initiative of India, and designed the backend solution for how the database is going to look. The Aadhaar database is one of the largest databases in the world, driving millions of transactions on a daily basis. And it's a complex database. And we actually had a GCC take a lead, working with the government in driving that entire design strategy. So what does that mean? That tomorrow, anywhere in the world, there is a need of a hyper-scaled database managing millions of transactions. They're going to come to India because there's nowhere in the world are they going to find expertise on how to build and manage such kind of a database. If you have tomorrow, a situation where you need to define a BCP solution which will cater to a customer service center, which again attends to millions of calls. Well, India is the hub of customer care solutions, and if you're a telephone company, if you're a telecom service provider, if you're an incident management solution provider, you're going to experiment in India. So India is emerging as the hub for innovating for what next. It's also, India is one of the largest hubs for startups, tech startups, third largest in the world. And so the GCC startup collaboration in India has also become extremely strong. You have multiple corporate startups, collaboration incubators working here, many of them driven by companies such as Cisco and NetApp and Microsoft and Airbus. And all of these companies actually experimented with their startup collaboration models in India. And many of them have scaled globally. Others are tapping into the India model and looking for solutions for problems and blank spots within their solution chain that can now be supplemented through the collaboration with startups. This has also become a hub for building, like I mentioned earlier, digital talent. So most organizations have established their digital centers of excellence here. And that's how the work profile has actually evolved over the years. Could we move to the next one? Yeah. So again, this is just a glimpse of the different types of work that are now focus of the GCC. So as you can see, hyper-converged infrastructure, API-led strategy, startup partnerships, emergence of global business services. Okay, the reason we've highlighted this particular point is India has also very, very luckily become a destination for multifunction centers. So it's not just the digital and the technical skills, but India also has a significant pool of finance graduates, of graduates in arts and sciences who are taking up many functional roles, and hence you see multifunctional centers. What does that do? I mean, just think about it. Many companies that I worked with who set up their centers here, their biggest challenge was that their organization was so distributed because of so many acquisitions that they've had. They have teams in a location which is probably the only team there. And it's completely secluded from the rest of the org, from rest of the functions. And so there are so many such destinations. For many of them, India was actually the first destination where they had all functions and all teams with critical presence. So what does that essentially mean is these GCCs have now become the hub for experimenting for any org-wide changes. You want to go agile, people are piloting that in India because you act together, you have these 10 teams which actually need to collaborate and release a solution. And so if you have to try out your agile delivery, that's where you try out. You are launch new talent practices. People are experimenting with India, given the young, dynamic, a lower average age that you see in the Indian workforce. It becomes a fantastic place for people to try out practices that can be cross-functional, cross-team, and allow for you to experiment with all different types of talent bases. So that's again become a critical focus of GCCs in India. Shall we move to the next slide? Yeah, a little bit on the digital skills, given, even earlier, just before we started this panel, me and my esteemed colleagues on the panel, we were having a discussion about what really drives GCCs or any enterprise for that matter. And the core is talent. We are a knowledge and people-driven industry. So our focus is to get the right set of people to do the work better. And in that space, the next-gen solutions, the next-gen talent landscape that we talk about, India has been a great focus, and GCCs have actually driven that mandate. Whatever the Indian enterprises, the startups, and are doing today is because many of these GCCs have actually been able to lay the ground and the foundation of what these next-gen talent, requirements are, skills are, and how do we develop it. So as you can see, there are different ways in which GCCs are grooming talent in India. They're, of course, building a lot of talent grounds up, but there's also talent that is available in the market. And those are the areas where people are more interested in hiring the right set of talent. But just so that I bring your notice, the build section, GCCs have actually been instrumental in building a very, very strong base of digital talent in India through their programs, through their university academia partnership, through startup mentoring programs, many of these. Let's go today. This is a quick overview of what percentage of GCCs in India are actually, and I'm not saying in bits and pieces, but they have sizable, considerable practice and talent working in these areas. So just think about your new age talent, preference that has been shown for GCCs, where out of the 2,000 plus GCCs that we spoke about, almost 65% of them have significant AI ML capabilities here in India. 55% of them have IoT. IoT is again, because it's not the same as AI ML. It's not AI which, a retail company needs, a bank needs, a software company needs, a database company needs, and even the smallest of, even a manufacturing unit company needs it to look at their productivity. IoT is obviously limited to certain segments, but still it's 55% of people are looking at. Data analytics, almost 85%, cloud 80%, cybersecurity, another very, very strong emerging area in India. And COVID has just pushed this forward. So I am assuming that when the update that we are doing right now is going to push this number significantly forward. RPA, enterprise mobility, and blockchain. And these are some of the areas where there is a lot of focus. Blockchain, in most GCCs in India are at an experimental stage. I think almost everybody has a blockchain capability, but because we spoke about sizable capability driving impact, you'll see a slightly less number of blockchain because most of them are at an experimental stage and trying to figure out how do we apply it. Can we move to the next slide? And like I mentioned, India has also become the hub for startup collaboration. This is a strong area where GCCs are leveraging and they are creating startup interactions as parallel channels of innovation. So what you do is for people who are more invested in terms of time and commitment. They are running startup collaboration programs. They're driving joint go-to-market solutions with them. They are onboarding startups as their own vendors, of course, making equity investments. But but there are lots of GCCs, at least 300 to 400 of them, who are running lightweight programs with startups, which means that there are monthly touch points. They're not super engaged, as in the sense that they have seeded mentors and providing them, taking them to market and those kind of commitments, but there are lighter engagement models where there are regular touch points. People are coming together. If a solution clicks, there's joint go-to-market and, and commitments like that. All in all, I think the way we are seeing the evolution of GCCs, it's really moved in the last 2 decades. It's really moved from the point where it was to get things done cheaper to get things done better. And that's essentially the story that we've seen. The future is bright as we speak. There are, even through COVID, which was a difficult time, undoubtedly, there have been at least 30 companies that have actually set up entities and started hiring last year. Of course, the speed has been slightly lower than other years, given the restrictions in travel and the uncertainties in business, but that didn't stop 30. The number of companies have pretty much been the same. The rate of new hires might have been slightly lower than what they have planned for. So the journey, the momentum is there, the journey is moving forward, and there is a lot of excitement in this sector from companies across the world. Thank you so much. I would now like to invite upon the panel my esteemed colleagues here, Mr. Anupam Verma, who is the regional head for ICICI in Southeast Asia. He will be moderating the panel. Over to you.
Thanks, Sukanya. That was quite an insightful presentation. You've set a very strong foundation for us to launch into the panel discussion. Good afternoon to all of you. I am Anupam Verma and I head Southeast Asia business for ICICI Bank. ICICI is among the most diversified and respected financial groups in India with a lineage of over 60 years. ICICI Bank is one of the largest private sector banks in India and has a strong digital banking footprint, well supported by 20,000 touch points in terms of branches and ATMs. In Singapore, our mandate is to contribute to the Singapore-India corridor, or ecosystems that we call it, in terms of investment, trade, and remittances. Our clients in the region include MNCs, global funds, and the non-resident Indians. With the philosophy of one bank, one customer, we work seamlessly across Singapore and India. In India, we are a banker of first choice for more than 1,000 MNCs from 50 plus countries. MNCs see a value in our digital transaction banking and supply chain solutions. Employees of MNCs, and especially GCCs, see a lot of value in our digital and frictionless banking experience. We have what we call ICICI Stack for GCC employees, which stands for start relationship instantly, transact digitally, avail Insta loans, care for self, which is protection or the insurance, and save and invest, and keep growing. There are customized offerings that we have for GCC employees, like tie-up for upgrading professional skills, to name a few. Now coming to the panel discussion, I think Sukanya, laid a very good foundation. MNCs have long embraced India as a preferred destination for GCCs. As Sukanya also mentioned, there are more than 2,000 GCCs, and it's estimated that India has almost 50% market share. The journey began with MNCs setting up captives for cost optimization and operational excellence. And then, as Sukanya also mentioned, it moved to creating center of excellences. And in the post-COVID world, with industry boundaries blurring and the business models being transformed for the digital age, we believe GCCs can play a much larger role as what Sukanya called GCC 4.0, or digital transformation centers. So just to discuss the GCC opportunity in detail in the remote everything post-COVID world, we have a great panel with us today. Now I would like to welcome our panelists for the session. First, we have Kirsty Illard, Global Head for JLL Business Services, joining us from Singapore. With that, we have Anurag Srivastav, Vice President at Everest Group, joining us from UK. And we have Karthik Natarajan, who is a Managing Director for BPM Supply Chain and Data Analytics at Nexdigm, joining us from India. For the ease of this discussion, the audience are in listen-only mode. And if you have any questions for the panelists, please leave them in the chat box, and we'll be happy to address them at the end of the panel discussion. So without further ado, let's take up the first question for the panel here. Kirsty, my first question is for you. You're the practitioner. Since you have an operational GCC in India, it compels me to ask, what was the thought behind this decision? What was the deciding factor for setting up captive over partnering with an outsourcing service provider?
Yeah, thank you. It was a difficult but an easy decision, I think, as well. I think because part of it is organisation culture, and we've got a long tenure. We're a 170-something year organisation. But there were some specific reasons why we set up the way that we did, over and above, our culture and our preferred way of doing things. First up, what we do is actually quite complex. And does require a lot of actual client facing. So the end client of JLL, we're actually touching, whether it's landlords, whether it's tenants, whether it's actually some of our business clients where we're actually conducting valuations for. So we do have that interaction directly with the JLL end customer out of our teams we're based in Gagana, and we've also got a digital setup in Bangalore as well. We also saw it as an opportunity for us to sort of stabilize and mature our activity with that sort of direct hands-on management of what we were doing. And the third reason really is that sort of continuum that Sukanya shared with us. Really, how do we drive from something that started off at being business line aligned, start moving through process alignment and into that capability model? So those were the three reasons as to sort of why we set up the way that we did.
Okay, interesting. My next question is to you, Anurag. What are the top 5 innovative initiatives for which global MNCs usually set up GCC operations?
Sure, so I think at a broad brush level, there are multiple drivers that are making companies retain control of some of the more next gen differentiating kind of themes of work. So this could be around the digital services, this could be around even IT in some cases, this could be around confidential customer data, for example, within customer experience, customer services, or operations, for example, in the BFSI context, right, banking and insurance kind of context. So having said that, given like at Everest Group, we analyze a lot of data around center setups and what are GBS centers doing. I would say the 4 or 5 key areas where we see GCCs or GBS centers actually leading transformation and digital for their enterprises include artificial intelligence, so very strong area of work. Again, next gen, and something that companies are not happy to outsource and let someone else run with it and take control. So that is one. IoT, so Internet of Things, again, something that is helping manufacturing, retail, automotive actually differentiate themselves against competition, right? Cybersecurity, very critical need of the hour, given a rise in phishing and cyber attacks, right? So companies want to retain control of that. And this is more on the technology side, the digital side. Obviously, there is cloud. You could argue that is a little more mature, but even their cloud migration or cloud native apps development is very strong right now. And we see that many companies have actually taken control of that stream of work, even actually in many cases in-sourcing work from third parties, right? Analytics remains a very strong area. Again, this is an area where companies are dealing with customer data and the inferences that come out of it actually differentiate top line, bottom line, right? And so that is one big area. And then finally, I'd say there's cognitive automation. So moving on from RPA, where you're applying some of the more AI ML kind of capabilities into automation, that is another strong area of work. So overall, we see that I think now about 50 to 60% of new GBS center setups, of all new GBS center setups globally, are actually more digital oriented. So that is a fairly strong, reaffirmation of the business model or the sourcing model. And then even from an India context, that pretty much is around the same kind of ballpark number.
So you see a lot of bleeding edge work happening.
Correct. Yes.
Kirsty, my next question is to you. Which are the partners that GCCs look at, when they look at engaging in a low-cost geography? Would it be a partner to support high-end technology, or a sub-vendor for certain activities, or an innovation incubator? How do you see that?
Look, I think we have a very sort of simple philosophy, which and this is really about making sure that the right work, the right activity, is done in the right way, in the right place, by the right people. So we would say that a number of sort of strategic partnerships are the right way to go, really anchored into what is it that we're doing. That extends to everything that we do for our clients as well. So you really have to anchor back into the diagnosis of the actual activity and the work, and look at all aspects of your target operating model. And what we're seeing over time is that traditional sort of people, process, technology paradigm around operating models. The technology has come right to the forefront, to Anurag's point, in terms of that drive for digitalization. But you can't ignore the process side of things, the data side of things, and the people. And those people may be your own captive SMEs, your own captive capability, or it may be a number of sort of strategic partnerships. So partners do play a critical role. It's definitely worked well in terms of leveraging all of those different types of expertise. I don't think I'd go for one over the other, Anupam. I really do think it comes back to being super clear about what outcomes are you trying to drive, and then picking the partner where you've got great cultural alignment, where they've got the expertise, and where you're really going to drive that value creation together and make it a real win-win situation. So that is how we're approaching it here at JLL.
Yeah, I agree. Karthik, in your experience, how would a firm like Nexdigm assist with the demand of a new age GCC operations?
Yeah, so first of all, I think I do want to kind of quickly paraphrase some of the common themes that we just discussed. Right, we talked about meeting the ever-changing demands through IoT, through analytics, through target operating model, etc. But what has also changed with all these is the new operating model, right? So, for example, working from home, as some of us would love it, others are saying that it's already been over a year. I mean, how is it sustainable, right? So, I think from that perspective, as Nexdigm, the first of a kind, we'd obviously provide virtual talent, right? I mean, this somebody who's kind of, because we have our BPM work staff and they're already working for a lot of Fortune 50, Fortune 500 clients across many industries and many processes. So I think that's the first of a kind. Now, that was not the model earlier we ever envisaged as an organization, because we are a solution provider. We are morely into understanding what the issues are and providing, but that's the first solution everybody requires, right? How do we have virtual talent who are trained, who are ready to deliver? Now, with that, quickly harping on to the analytics, and which has been our core strength. So we have very high-end analytics solutions, not as a platform, but as a service, and coupled with machine learning and the automation. So that's something we've delivered for many customers, and that becomes more important because as the construct of GCC or GPS, there are a lot of expectations that the parent company has from the GCC, and one of the expectations is that at this point, what has changed, what is the shift, and can someone provide them the data points of taking some crucial decisions. And it could be as simple as these are the vendors whom we can renegotiate the cost, right? These are the new areas of revenue generation. All these are, at some point in time, data driven. So that is something we help create a center of excellence for analytics for some of our clients. Second is the business transformation, right? And change is as much as we all hate it or like it, but it takes its own steps. It takes a lot of effort. So we help our clients being part of the change management. Also building the bridge between the parent company and the GCCs. So that's the second thing. The third thing is obviously our overall workforce. Also, we have talents who are into project management office. So we are a CFO's eyes and ears. We are the CEO's eyes and ears, wherein we drive the entire transformation end to end with a hard coded benefit. So because Anupam, you'd also agree, right? I mean, gone are the days when we'll say, okay, I hire a consultant, and with a strategy on a piece of paper, we need to see implementation and the benefits, and we put our neck on the line to say on outcomes versus only efforts. So that has changed. I mean, it's not that we are the only ones, but gone are the days wherein we'll say we'll kind of try and assist. Now people are talking about what about the outcomes, and your fee is linked to the outcome. That's the big shift that's already happened, and we're already ahead of the curve as far as the outcomes are concerned. And last but not the least, we also have the lawyers, the paralegals on our board, wherein we help the GCCs and the parent organization do the renegotiation with their vendors. So we do the entire end-to-end contract management system with the pre-execution and the post-execution as well. So these are our suites of offering. But one thing that is a common theme, Anupam, I mean, based on my experiences, with the new things that are changing, people are still kind of taking some things for granted, right? The data security, because in the name of business as usual, becomes much more important the way I see. I mean, we don't want to wait for a time wherein something happens to the data, and all of a sudden the entire industry starts looking at this model with skepticism. So I think that becomes important. And the cloud migration, because those are the very key critical component of the success of a new gen GCCs. And that's what we do for our services, for our customers.
Okay. Kirsty, my next question is to you. From your experience of operating a GCC in India, what kind of support these GCC require from the banking ecosystem, and how has it changed in the post-COVID world?
Sure. I mean, I think one immediate example is we've onboarded close to 500 people actually over the last 12 months. So that's 500 people that actually haven't met their manager face to face, haven't been in a JLL office, and we've had to completely transform our onboarding experience. And what that has meant that some of the key partnerships and some of the new products that the banks have been able to put to market, and very, very quickly. And I think your own organisation, Anupam's at the front of this in terms of getting some really innovative products to markets, just to allow people to have a very smooth onboarding experience, to make sure that bank accounts are set up on time, and that we're able to make sure that that's a real sort of frictionless experience for them. And particularly sort of given the population demographics in terms of sort of the generational demographics that we're talking about, that they're really able to experience some of the new banking products. And that's just one example in the onboarding space, where just the simple act of payroll, getting it set up, getting new bank accounts set up, and us being able to sort of again make that a very seamless and frictionless experience. And I think that sort of whole piece around the employee experience has proven absolutely critical as we've stretched ourselves over the last sort of 12 months. I'm really proud of my team. My team have actually, engagement has increased significantly over this period of time. And things like that play no small part in ensuring that employee experience is compelling and creates that stickiness to the organisation. So along with things like that, which we've been able to sort of partner with the banking ecosystem on, massive amount of time on people engagement, making sure that there's connection, a lot of focus on well-being. We continue to invest in learning, as well as making sure that we leverage forums and platforms like the one that we're on today to really sort of help drive some collaboration. But that said, most of our people are really looking forward to a safe but flexible return to the office as well, as soon as we're able to do so.
Yeah, you're right. I think in terms of trend, even we have seen the same. Finally, organizations and businesses are made of people. And now, you talked about the demographics and the entire digital infrastructure which is there in India. I think increasingly more and more people are doing banking online, transactions, buying fixed deposits, buying insurance, taking loans and for e-commerce and other transactions. In fact, we saw a massive number of corporates who not only activated their corporate internet banking, but the number and range of transactions which they are doing now was unthinkable 1 year back. So I think clearly there's a big transition which is happening. And as I said, organizations are made of people. So people, for their own personal use, if they are using digital services, digital financial services, I think the same thought process is going in terms of when they are doing it for the organization. So from that perspective, I think the experience is becoming completely digital and frictionless. My next question is to you, Anurag. How easy is it for GCCs to do transformations? When it comes to technology adoption or improving the processes, what approach should a GCC adopt?
Interesting question, Anupam. Given that what we talked about earlier was that we see a lot of movement towards the GCC GBS model, right? Because of all the considerations around wanting to retain more control of the transformation, being more equipped. So I think when you talk about why and how it is easy for GBS GCC to do this, there are multiple things that come into play. One, I think they have this internal access to their own internal clients and domain experts and business leaders, right? So it's better for their own domain understanding. They see the vision and mission of the firm better, so they align with whether customer experience, for example, is the most important goal, or whether cost savings is the most important goal, or whether rapid innovation is the ultimate goal, right? So there's complete alignment in terms of shared goals, right? Secondly, I think in most cases, GBS GCC will have very good access to talent, given that deliberately they'll be set up in a location that is able to tap into the best and the greatest and depth and breadth of talent, correct? Third, also something Sukanya mentioned, GBS or GCC is equipped to do cheap innovation, right? So you fail fast, fail cheap. You have access to low-cost talent. You have the capabilities internally to actually drive innovation because of the things I earlier mentioned, and so you can actually take that plunge more easily and with less at stake. And then I think the other bit is that most of these organizations are actually multifunctional, so they are able to bring in many stakeholders and many things that work together. So they are able to collaborate across operations, technology, involve HR and finance and legal and IT in change management, get buy-in, right? So they are at that central place, where there's a sharing of skills and technologies that they're able to drive this innovation across multiple areas. Even I think in many cases we've seen GCC organizations being able to identify where there should be innovation, given that they saw there's some synergies or opportunities because they were straddling across multiple business units or function, right? And the final point is, I think there's more agility, given that it is an internal organization. They can get staffing reallocation, they can get budget more easily. So there's less red tape compared to when you're actually working with a third party, right? So some of these factors work very well with that model. I think when it comes to how they should be driving some of the best practices that we picked up from our work with GBS organizations. I'd say probably lay out 5 or 6 points, right? One, very early prioritize what areas you're focusing on, right? It is very important to stay focused. Yes, there are multiple demands and pulls that will come in from stakeholders, but it is important to have a filtering mechanism, have a pipeline, and then say, okay, these are the 5 opportunities we'll focus on this year, right? Second, very importantly, get buy-in and alignment from stakeholders. So whether it is business leaders, whether it is HR, IT, other functions, very early on, get buy-in. Linked to that is change management. So be conscious of whether there is a, on the legal side or the talent side or the infrastructure side or a governance side, you need to, manage, even from a regulatory side, actually, whether it impacts, workforce, for example, then you need to be able to manage that change for the next years, few years as well. Fourth, I think, don't wait for things to be perfect, right, or ideal. Like we said, it's okay to fail. So launch into a pilot at a MVP level, and that enables different kinds of learnings. And because you are able to fail cheap, you should be more incented to take the plunge early. Finally, it's important to measure and track. So measure performance, track success, build a repository of things that didn't work, things that work. And going by the adage of what gets measured gets improved, it's important to put some monitoring in place. And then that also then in many ways, in many cases we've seen lends itself into becoming global process owners, global COEs. So think in the longer term, keep thinking about how you can become global process owners and centers of excellence for certain areas of work.
Kirsty, there's a lot of discussion around GCCs doing robotics projects. So what is your view about the delivery versus the expectations?
I think that some of it is actually a repeat of what Anurag's just said there in terms of being super clear on your prioritization, making sure you've got that stakeholder alignment, change leadership at all levels is absolutely critical. And it is a challenge. My own personal view is that we don't spend enough time on process and data. And we put robotics in, or we put any type of automation or technology in, and we expect everything to be magically different, and it isn't. So there is some heavy lifting that does need to go on, and it's hopefully it's in the age of GCC and talking digitalization, we don't forget some of these basics that have to happen, in my view, in order for that technology to really drive the experience that you're looking for, whether it's efficiency, cost save, the client experience, your HR experience. And I think that when that heavy lifting, when that diligence hasn't happened as part of the change management process, then you are going to see clunkiness. You are going to see a limited return on that investment. So for me, process, data, technology, change, leadership all really need to go together in order to get to the business outcomes. And being super clear about those outcomes. What are they? What do we actually want to see? What's the exam question, as we often say? What's the problem we're trying to solve? Well, what's the opportunity we're trying to really sort of exploit or explore here, and putting that in the very center of what we're doing? Then you drive the business outcomes, then you drive the return on investment, and you get some great digital experiences along the way. But never underestimate, in my view, the real importance of that process and data to bring the digital, robotic, or broader technology experience to bear for the organization.
Yeah, you're right. I think that the clear articulation and planning, as you mentioned, is very, very important to set expectation and ensure that it is achieved. And now we are moving from what Anurag mentioned, RPA earlier, to a a situation of hyper automation where people are talking about different technology tools coming together to give a holistic solution, and there what you mentioned will become all the more relevant. My next question is to you, Karthik. I think you briefly talked about it, but what value does a global organization derive when they partnered with Nexdigm for managing transitions and the technology adoption?
I'll tell you, I think, purely for a GCC, right, they get a implementation and a thought leader as a partner, right? So one, as an organization, because we have done this for many, many years, continue to do that. So we kind of get a lot of experience in both inside and outside to our clients. So that is very important. And we also find a relevance because not all the transformation methodology or the transition methodology is relevant for all the customers. So we have to first understand what is the suitability or the relevance. The third is even in terms of bridging the communication gap, right? Because there has always been the expectation that as a parent organization have from GCC. Sometimes level setting the timelines or the outcome is equally important. Now, those are the, how do I say, the softer benefit. The hardcore benefit is obviously the cost savings that we have, and naturally getting into the areas of opportunities wherein we can transform, right? I mean, we get them the best technology vendor, or we get them the new ideas of setting up the center of excellence and in many different areas. One thing Nexdigm can be proud about is we are not the advisory, we are the implementation partner as well, right? More of implementation, less of advisory. So I think, which means that you have a guaranteed outcome. In many of these things, it's always a partnership, right? A partnership model is where we also need a lot of information, right? We can't be anywhere near our customers in terms of what they've been going through on a day-to-day or the business acumen. We will not have that. Therefore, the partnership model is we would need to learn their everyday issues, get into the details, have those open dialogue that we can partner well, and then act on their behalf internally for the change management, for the solutioning, etc. And it's a very how do I say, slightly tricky sometimes and slightly exciting because it takes a lot of convincing internally. Because change management, right? I mean, on RP Anupam, you know, some people would perceive as contra because they would say, many people lose jobs. What if I kind of let go of people and the RPA doesn't kick in? Who's going to take that risk? And that's where companies like Nexdigm will come into play. That we also have our own innovation lab, wherein a lot of GCCs can ask us to deliver in Nexdigm environment. Once it succeeds, then we can go and replicate it into the real environment. So those are some of the models that we are thinking and we are delivering. So and only suitable for our customers, because and one thing I can tell you, Anupam, with all these kind of things, we are where we are because of our customers, right? We learned it from them, and we are able to deliver to their colleagues. So that's Nexdigm for you.
Kirsty, you have run operations in India for different functions. So what are the key benefits or advantage that you see in that? And at a broader level, what are the strategic objectives, and do you think they have been met?
Well, let me answer your last question first. I absolutely would say they have. They've probably been exceeded, actually. And I think that the resiliency and the delivery and the continued innovation that we've seen, during the most testing time I think any of us have had in our professional careers over the last 12 months has really sort of shone through from our teams in India. So I think from our point of view, we would say we've definitely moved beyond those initial goals of efficiency. Resiliency is definitely much more on the tip of everybody's tongue now. We've definitely busted some of the myths about proximity being important to get work done. Definitely moved further, I would say, up the value chain. We've done that, I think, because of the investment in talent and really putting a very people-centric approach into what we've done. I know that there's a lot of very eminent technologists on this call, much better than I am you can buy technology off the shelf. You've really got to invest in your people. You put that first, and everything else will come. So says the 30-year career HR person. So talent pipelines, the basics, I will say it again, process re-engineering, process redesign, reimagining what that can be, really thinking about your data and how that fits into your operating model and use of technology. A lot of innovation, I would say, through data insights, really mining that data to sort of what is it telling us, where can we go, let's create some opportunity in this ambiguous situation, and working very much end to end with the different businesses has been crucial in moving us up and developing us and making us successful. So yeah, strategic and operational alignment with stakeholders and making sure that there's no gaps in that sort of stakeholder management matrix, and that you're able to really align around that. I'll say it again, putting process and automation at the start of the work activity, that diagnosis of work, the processes, the data, and making sure that you're able to sort of deliver the really smooth implementation of technology. Again, a compelling people proposition at the very center, and continued investment in leadership and leadership capability that is there for our people, but also in the broader JLL ecosystem, at global forums, in front of our executive board, really sort of making the full force, the full impact, the full benefit and success of our centre in India. But we also leveraged our own JLL expertise, you know, in terms of location strategy. We have the most awesome workplaces because we're JLL. And that in itself creates value that we're looking to sort of really sort of further drive as, again, that sort of safe return to the office, and how we can create those collaborative, those ideation spaces for our people to continue to sort of grow their careers and grow our teams in India very successfully.
You know, I think we can go on and on, but we also have to keep an eye on the time. So let me directly go to some of the questions which have come from the audience. I think this one, I think Sukanya, you may like to give it a shot. Don't you think that the cost differential is fading fast? Would GCCs remain lucrative 5 years from now?
Okay, so the way I would like to answer is that the conversation on the cost differential is definitely fading fast, which means that today the cost differential is really not a conversation. The topic and the talk is all around value. I'll give you an example. There is a LATAM-based company which has a GCC in India. In many cases, they actually pay higher salaries in India than what they would pay in their parent organization. And they're comfortable to do that because they are able to get talent that they will find it very difficult to get there. If you talk about cost differential as compared to a US or a Europe, the differential is still significant given how the economy is panned out. Of course, there was at one point 1/5 difference. Now it's probably not 1/5, it's probably 1/4 or 1/3 in some cases. That's just a number that I'm showing. I'm not saying that's exactly the difference, but that's also because the quality of work that's getting done here is increasing, right? So you are still paying, you were probably at an average salary of X. Today you're in an average salary of maybe 1.3X. But that's also because the kind of roles that you're hiring here today, you weren't hiring earlier. So I think the cost differential is there when it compares to the parent organ countries. Cost differential when it comes to, let's say, Vietnam or Philippines or Manila and some of these other, of course, there's a question mark, even Eastern Europe, some of the places. But the conversation in India is all about the quality and the scale of talent. And that's the conversation that we need to drive. We need to drive the quality of talent, the quality of output, and the quality of ownership. And and really nobody's talking about cost today as much as they used to a few years back.
I couldn't agree with you more. When we also meet a lot of our clients in Singapore here, I think the focus right now is, as you also mentioned in your presentation, how does it add to the bottom line? How does it create shareholders value, and how does it create long-term customer value? In today's time, organizations are looking at changing business model and creating that digital transformation. And if they have to do that, the kind of work which is required in terms of creating, for them to stay relevant and giving a more customized and digital experience. So from that perspective, I think clearly what you talked about GIC 4.0 will have a big role to play. There's one more question which has come. As many business strategies evolve over time, has outsourcing as a strategy also become a necessity for global businesses? Anyone would like to take a shot on this?
Yeah, if you
I can take a. Sorry,
Yeah.
Karthik, go on.
So, okay, I'll just maybe just one sentence and then Anurag, you can maybe compliment. So it has much more, right? Because if you look at barring 2 to 3 industries, Anupam, most of the industries badly impacted, right? Last 1 year, especially the top line, and you have to readjust your expenses. So, and one of the ways, I'm not saying that's the only way, but one of the ways for people to look at is outsourcing, so that they can focus on critical thing that matters to them. They can at the same time bring the cost down and then make it much more efficient. So with these 3 tools, yeah, I mean, if I were the CEO of a global corporation based out of any part of the world, I would look at outsourcing much more seriously now. Naturally, there are the issues that you would say, how do you do remote transition? How do you get a trust and buy-in from internal and the partner with these kind of new way of working? And there's also the challenges, right? So over to Anurag.
Yeah, Karthik, I think pretty much the same, but potentially pushing it further. So if you look at the facts from last year to the year that was hit by the pandemic, in fact, most large service providers had a bumper year, right? What that tells you is that there was continued trust in the outsourcing model. As per also going by the conversation we were having just before we started the live webinar, the future is going to be hybrid. So even from a sourcing model perspective, we believe that companies will push on both models. So they will want to, retain work that is differentiating, that is, that they want to retain more control on closer home. So in the GCC model, whereas stuff that they believe that providers are more mature with, they can get some cost advantage there. In some cases, we've seen companies outsourcing stuff that they believe will require huge upfront investment that they are not willing to make in this current environment, or they believe that the third-party landscape will have better tools and strategies and experience of working through some of their problems. So in these cases, we see that there's more outsourcing that is going to happen. So we believe that there'll be a 2-pronged, potentially even 3-pronged, where you bring in some hybrid BOT, JV kind of models in play. There will be a flexible hybrid future.
Yeah, I agree. I think one is from the manufacturing perspective, but if you also look at a lot of service organizations who are, so to say, digital platform kind of setups, they actually look at this more as a partnership. And their fundamental thought process is that why build everything ourselves? Just create partnerships, and then you can just plug it in through APIs. It helps you improve time to market, and as well as give a better customer experience. So I think even that narrative is changing on how services organizations, especially the new age businesses, look at outsourcing. I think we have almost run out of time now. This brings us to the end of today's session. We hope that you found the session useful and relevant, and it will help you better evaluate your strategies. On behalf of ICICI Bank, I would like to thank our co-partner, Nexdigm, all the panelists, and all the participants who made this session a success. Thank you again for joining in. Stay safe and bank on us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.